opportunity to smile and meet Dr. Davis and get their book signed. We're really thrilled to be here tonight, and it's always such a pleasure to see folks from the community here. Without you guys, this place doesn't exist. The strength in our community doesn't exist, so I thank you all for being here. And I'd like to welcome Therese Salib, member of the Evergreen Faculty for Transitional Feminist Studies, who'll kick this event off. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Welcome, everyone. Therese Saliba. I'm also, in addition to being Faculty of Feminist Studies at Evergreen, a board member of the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice. Thank you for joining us this evening for a conversation with Angela Davis on collective struggle in critical times. I'd like to welcome Evergreen students and programs, and a very special welcome to Evergreen Tacoma. Our sister campus. And we're also celebrating Black History Month, which we hope is not soon illegal. But for those of us who've studied and been inspired by the long Black freedom struggle, the Black radical tradition, the brilliance of Black writers and feminist scholars like Angela Davis, we celebrate and take inspiration from Black history and our talented colleagues all year round. Yeah! This program was a collective effort with the Olympia Film Society, Rachel Corrie Foundation, Evergreen Tacoma, Evergreen student interns and activists, especially with the arcade projects in Tacoma S&A. And the many who've been involved in a range of organizing, from the Gaza encampment and negotiations with the Evergreen administration to move toward divestment, to gateways for incarcerated youth and the Black Prisoner Caucus. Angela Davis's brilliant writing connects this nexus of prison abolition, Palestine solidarity, and feminist intersectional justice. We are incredibly honored and excited to have Angela Davis in our community at this critical time to draw wisdom from her decades-long radical intellectual work and political activism. She has fought courageously alongside others through other critical historical moments, from her own imprisonment and the Black Power movement of the early 70s to the global movements for Black lives and a free Palestine today. We are living through another great political crisis with the US-backed genocidal war in Gaza and the rise to power of white nationalist far right in the United States. Angela Davis offers both clarity and courage. She insists on a vision of abolition where radical, anti-capitalist, anti-racist, decolonial, queer feminisms are inseparable. And she reminds us that change happens through collective movement building. She has written, "We cannot go on as usual. We cannot be moderate. We will have to be willing to stand up and say no with our combined spirits, our collective intellects, and our many bodies." And in support of the Rachel Corrie Foundation and the people of Palestine, Dr. Davis has very generously waived her honorarium for this event. Tonight, as we focus on solidarity and collective struggles, we celebrate that Leonard Peltier is finally free. Turtle Mountain after 50 years of struggle and still fighting. And as we look at the impacts of settler colonialism from the US to Palestine, we gratefully acknowledge and honor the Squaxin Island tribe upon whose traditional homelands we stand, and the Puyallup tribe upon whose traditional lands Evergreen Tacoma's campus is located. From Olympia's Hidden History Project to the Puyallup Nation Water Warriors' participation in the Block the Boat action against military shipments to Israel, we are grateful for your solidarity, and we strive to uplift the voices and histories of the tribes of these lands and waters. These are challenging times for our communities and for the world. In the context of Palestine-Israel, we remember lives taken, both Palestinian and Israeli, as well as those in Lebanon, the Sudan, and beyond. The Rachel Corrie Foundation was created to continue the work began by Rachel, who in 2003 was killed in Gaza by an Israeli military-operated bulldozer while defending a Palestinian family's home from demolition. Shortly before her death, she wrote that she was witnessing children being killed, greenhouses destroyed, homes and water wells demolished. She said, "Please tell people I am in the midst of a genocide." Her warning 2 decades ago is now beyond dispute after the catastrophic destruction of Gaza and the killing of more than 60,000 Palestinians, 70% of them women and children. We're privileged to be here tonight having this discussion, even as some colleges and universities in the United States, the country that armed and financed the Gaza genocide and participated in the destruction of all its universities. Even now, they are silencing critical discussion, activism, and academic freedom. Tonight's intergenerational conversation will be moderated by Gilda Sheppard and Ranna. They will be speaking along with scholars, activists, artists, and students from Olympia, Tacoma, and Seattle who are working to educate and transform systems away from incarceration and militarization and towards more life-affirming possibilities. As the Palestinian Feminist Collective states, our work as feminists organizing against violence is often challenging, but it is essential, especially now. We refuse to accept a world defined by destruction, dispossession, and death. As feminists, our daily efforts are rooted in the pursuit of justice and the fundamental right to life for all people. This is needed now more than ever. Or as Angela Davis writes, it is in collectivities that we find reservoirs of hope and inspiration. A quick run through of our program tonight before the conversation with Angela Davis, moderated by Dr. Gilda Sheppard and Ranna. We'll hear from a student speaker and a spoken word artist, and then I'll introduce our moderators. Their discussion will last about an hour. Evergreen students and a member of the Black Prisoner Caucus will initiate Q&A, and we'll also be taking audience questions through a QR code provided on the screen after the conversation. And as Audrey explained after the event, Angela Davis will be signing books in the front of the theater here. So I'm now very pleased to introduce Evergreen student speaker Janiri Munoz, a member of Evergreen's SCUIDAC Student Union, on the negotiating team of Evergreen's Gaza encampment, and a student in the Gateways for Incarcerated Youth program. Welcome to
so many people here. My name is Janiri Munoz. I use they, them pronouns. I'm very excited to be here. When I was asked to do this program a couple weeks back, I really struggled to figure out what I should talk about and what I could contribute to you all. I began to think of Dr. Angela Davis and the impact she had on my education. Memories of reading her work for the first time and becoming radicalized in the classroom. Hearing concepts and ideas that aligned with the way I wanted to walk through my life, through my career. They all popped into my mind. But like so many people out there, I was radicalized at a much younger age, not out of choice, but out of necessity. Out of my existence and identity being made political, out of my community and those I love becoming targets of an oppressive system. When I was 7, my grandfather was deported back to a home he fled out of fear for his safety and future. At that age, I understood nothing except that the system was fucked and they took away my favorite person. I'm a senior at the Evergreen State College now, where I've had the opportunity to participate in the Gateways for Incarcerated Youth program. Faculty, Faculty, Dr. Teresa Leva has led us in the focus of mass incarceration, its links to slavery, liberation and abolition, feminism, cultural studies, and other systems of oppression globally. As we watch the policies coming out of the United States government today, we see more people forced to face the reality of the blatant attacks on those within my own community. During the current spike of ICE arrests, Spanish-speaking and Latina community members have become the main targets of immigration and deportation. An attack that is not happening just along our southern borders, but across the nation. We are seeing reports of daily arrest quotas and schools having to warn their students about ICE presence. Dr. Davis was pivotal to my understanding of interconnected struggles. Immigration detention, just like mass incarceration, and the genocide happening in Palestine need to be understood as one. Skills learned, allyships built, we are all fighting for the same thing. Liberation for all who are oppressed and freedom to exist as humans, deserving of care and kindness. If I tried to list all of the things that are interconnected and all the struggles that we all share, I'd be here for the rest of this event. But I would argue that at its core, the majority of our struggles are rooted in systems of incarceration. Its links to slavery, labor, and the capitalist need to exploit and criminalize those they deem less than. While we know that both mass incarceration and immigration detention are intertwined as racist systems of social control, they are not reflected as one category when we see the statistics. They purposely make our communities into numbers while they divide and hide us from the world. Every day, an estimated 53,000 youth are held in facilities away from their homes in the United States. This number does not include those held within immigration detention. With an estimate of 18,600 youth under 18 within family units and 6,292 unaccompanied minors held within the Office of Refugee Resettlement, that makes an estimated total of 77,800 children being held in the United States at any given moment. Whose child is allowed to make a mistake? And what happens when that mistake is simply existing? The Gateways for Incarcerated Youth program I mentioned earlier is what is known as an inside-outside program, where students from the Olympia campus and Green Hill, a juvenile prison in Chehalis, have a joint classroom experience. Gateway started at Evergreen in 1996, longest running program for prisoners at Evergreen, I'm just saying. The program was rooted in the idea of providing and meeting the needs of the students who are on the inside. While it has changed over the course of its existence, it has historically utilized what we now know as a popular education model. As the school year progresses, students from both Olympia and Chehalis campus co-lead workshops based on their interests of the Chehalis students for the entire class. Going to Green Hill on Tuesdays, moving tables in the visitor center to form a circle at the start of every single class, meeting with the guys, laughing with them, learning with them, getting to know the special interests and talents that they each have is literally the best part of my week. This is not to take away from the realities of our peers' experiences. The guys share the struggles with us, the barriers they face inside and outside of the classroom. While their stories are not mine to tell, know that they exist and that they are many. Our class is full of amazing students, guys with hopes and dreams. Their stories would usually not be known by this many people, and so for that, I thank you all for listening. I would like your help in welcoming our next speaker, Terrence Turner, aka Caution, who is an activist, philosopher, poet, spoken word artist, author, proud father, Gateways and Evergreen alumni, and mentor for historically underserved youth. His profound passion for compassion is translated in his work for large-scale systemic change and intimate personal healing. Welcome, Terrence.
How's everybody doing tonight? Real quick, can you come up here real quick and grab your painting? Yeah, you grab your painting. Bring it over here to the front and lean it up against the front so the whole theater can see this beautiful work of art that you brought here as a gift for Angela Davis. Thank you for doing that. You can just lean it up right here. So interestingly enough, my name is Caution. It's an acronym. It stands for Constantly After Understanding that Inspires Opportunity and Networking. And the Gateways program that she was talking about is actually my life. I was one of the first young people in that program when it started. And if you have ever been in that class and read the book Through the Eyes of the Judge, the first chapter is my story. So it was an honor to be on this stage and hearing that being lifted right now. So shouts out to Susan Cravey and Dr. Carol Manu who created that program. Clap it up. Dr. Carol Manu was like a grandmother to me. You know, she saw the humanity in us as children, and that's why I'm even on this stage today. So we really gotta, just hold respect for her. She passed away not too long ago, but her legacy lives on. Like they said, the longest standing program at Evergreen. Also, obviously this is a really special day, right? We all here for this reason, right? But it's also a special day for me, so for a personal reason. But I need you to help me with something. Y'all can do that real quick? Okay. It's my mom's birthday today. So check this out. So real quick, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3. Y'all just be like, happy birthday, Mom. That's it. Can you do that? All right. 1, 2, 3. Because she told me if I didn't do that, I was gonna be in trouble. I was like, that is a ridiculous birthday request. Who does that? You're gonna put me on blast in front of everybody. That's why. All right, let's get into it. This first piece is called Implicit Bias. Born out of normalcy into implicit bias, never questioning their whiteness or their likeness, to dislike what isn't white, comprised with riding a wave of white fragility like a white knight into the night. They used to call them white lightning when they were young, playing cops and robbers for fun, and they never bothered to be the robber because they wanted to be the copper, one with a squad car and a badge and a gun. They wanted to be the law. Cops were the heroes. They were the good guys. But at that time, they were just too young to realize that implicit bias would eventually lead to black guys equaling bad guys. So at age 18, when they joined the local PD, they just couldn't see how their whiteness would eventually become their bias against black lives. Young cadets gunning for respect, not knowing what to expect, but expected to make a name for themselves. They were in charge, on call, at large, trying to impress their sarge. Rookies with something to prove, everything to gain, and nothing to lose, because they were the law. And they were going to be it all. The judge, the jury, and the executioner. And they could have talked to her instead of shooting her before they pursued her and lured her to her death, which culminated in shots fired, suspect down, 3 rounds in her chest. They guessed she was reaching. And as she lay there, barely breathing, face down on the cement, they were too busy securing the scene and noticed her young body had become lifeless. The ultimate price of blackness in America when whiteness is at an all-time crisis and they think they righteous because they the law. And they don't have to write the law, read the law. They don't even have to know the law to be the law. They can just pull us over, yank us out their car. We don't get to know what their reasons are. Illegal search and seizures at their leisure because they don't believe who we are, but they know this car. And they know that we can't afford to be driving it. That once implicit bias is now an explicit bias in alignment with that racist attitude and agenda, so there's no use in hiding it. So they told us to get out of the car, nigger. Get on the ground and don't you move or we will end you where you are nigga. Stop resisting. Stop being so damn persistent. Stop being so damn resilient and just let us murder you indefinitely. Because we don't care about your pleas. We don't care if you can't breathe. All they care about is us preventing thee from getting to the 9 minutes and 31 seconds it takes to end our existence with their knee. They are just doing their job, pursuant to the law. And now everyone's appalled. Like, they haven't been killing black and brown people in America every day. In America, KKK, in the name of the law. Just look at the legacy. Forged out of fear and white supremacy, they went from slave catcher to deputy, to domestic terrorists in bed sheets, to Jim Crow whites only segregation, to hanging blacks from trees. They are from the biggest gang that you will ever see. And we saw what they did to George, the whole world saw what they did to George, right? But right here, they killed Benny Branch, Emmanuel Ellis, Saeed Walkin, and hundreds and thousands more before and after they murdered George, because this is a war against you. You, and you. And anyone that looks like, walks like, talks like, acts like, even thinks like you, and you. So don't get it confused when we turn on the news and we see that they've killed another one of you, another one of me. And so on, and they get to drive around the city in their squad cars where we're painting murals of our loved ones' faces because our families are still trying to hold on to their cases, but there is no justice. There will be no justice. You will see no justice as long as the long arm of the law can murder black and brown people in public without repercussions, then go home to their wife and children and tell them that they love them like they didn't just kill someone over nothing in the name of the law. There is no resolve when we are not equal, and we are always separate, when we are always considered a threat, and that is with or without a weapon, and they are always desperately overprotective of that white privilege collected when it inevitably leaves us in the wrong place at the right time, no matter which direction we're headed, because they enforce a system of oppression without discretion, because they are the law with explicit bias and the right to exercise that whiteness in any likeness anytime they like, including killing our kindness with their weakness, because they are frightened by our greatness. Because they are frightened by our greatness. Because they see our light and they can't escape it. And therefore they have to take it or shade it to stop it from shining so bright. Because they fear you. Because they fear you. Because they fear you. And it shows every time they get near us and the way they approach us. So since we're into telling the whole truth, then let me indulge us. If they work for a system that promotes the killing and imprisonment of America's illegitimate children, then all cops are bad. If they shoot first and never ask questions later, I said never ask questions later. No-knock warrant the wrong all-right addresses and kill perfect strangers, then all cops are bad. They're not the heroes. They're not the good guys. They're the bad guys with an explicit bias towards black lives. Poem. Now I have to be mindful of my time. I don't want to take up too much space, but that poem is important, and I'm pretty sure you know why. But what's more important is the very first time I was ever asked to be on this stage was about 24 years ago. I just got released from my juvenile life sentence that they talk about in the Gateways program. And I was asked to come perform at the Capitol Theater, and I was like, oh my God, it's the big deal. I get to be on a stage in the theater. And while I was waiting outside to perform for the show, I was assaulted by a white man. Right in front of everybody, in front of the whole line. It was some crazy shit. And he snuck me, so I had a little shiner and shit, and I had to come in here and do a fucking poem with a goddamn shine. I was so mad. I was so fucking mad. But I can tell you the difference from this audience to that audience is I see a whole lot more reflections of me in here today than I saw back then. So that's progress. That's progress. And even though there wasn't a huge representation of me back then, what I can tell you was there was an old white lady that lives across the street from the Capitol Theater, and she was like, he didn't do anything, let him go. I love her. She was amazing. She was amazing because the cop actually had his hand on me and she yelled and he was like, oh, stop. Everybody knows whoever her name was. But you know, whenever we talk about trauma, whenever we talk about hardship, what are we doing to heal? What are we doing to heal? It's good to get the rage, it's good to feel the rage, it's good to direct the rage, it's good to feel angry, anger creates actions, right? So these are all good things, but what are we doing to heal, right? So if I'm gonna drop some painful shit like that on you, then I gotta wrap it up with something about love or something, right? Seems only fair. It ruined your whole day. Like, this guy was not ready for that. All right, so this next poem is called Black Love. Y'all with it? It's Black History Month, and I'm about to do a poem about black love. Let's try that again. I know it's dark in here. This piece is called Black Love. Black love is black magic. It's black understanding. It's black and it's beautiful, it's tall, black and handsome. Or in my case, light skin. Black love is loving our blackness. No matter what shade, no matter what happens, because black love is an action. It's something we practice. Black love is black compassion. It's black permanence all around us like terra firma and firmament. So black love is that love that you just can't circumvent. That love that can't be flirted with because it's already a perfect fit. It's perfect pitch. Black love is that love that'll make you stand up. Black love is that love that'll make you go hard in the paint and one. Black love is just black pain redefined. It's the graffiti on the walls and the speakeasies and underground mics. Black love is black shine, shimmering off of black skin under the tint of black lights. Black love is black pride. It's sacrifice. It's black lives mattering all the time, here and now and in the afterlife, so I'll be damned if I don't need it localized and satellite, because black love is why we can see the stars in the sky, the black of night. Because black love amplifies. Black love is that love that'll make you stand up. Black love is that love that'll make you go hard in the paint and one. There you go, you catching on. Black love is all black everything. Black herb, black spice, black beans, black rice, blackened fish, mac and cheese, and some of them peas with black eyes. Don't forget mama's greens that have you right. Black love satisfies the appetite like sweet tea over ice on a hot summer night. Black love is that black cherry on top of Nana's sweet potato pie. Black love is soul food and jazz and rhythm and rhyme and fashion and trend since the beginning of time. Because black love is just that type of vibe. Black love is that love that'll make you stand up. Black love is that love that'll make you go hard in the paint. Black love is black excellence. It's loving our black melanin with reverence and remembrance to our ancestors' intelligence. Black love is black medicine. It's resonant. It's that delicate elephant in the room that won't nobody reckon with, even though black love is prevalent, even though black love is evident. It's everywhere. It's unforgettable. And when black love is reciprocal, black love can get biblical. Because black love is a miracle, literal. It is spiritual fulfillment. It is loving ourselves for real and loving our black and brown children through thick and thin and again and again and again. And then some. Because black love is black healing. I'm Caution, y'all. If you want to follow me, Caution365 on Instagram.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Terrence. Thank you, Janeri. Terrence, on that tune of Black Love, I have to say, Terrence was speaking to the guys at Green Hill last month, exactly a month ago. And I talked to one of the guys just this past week, and I said, how were you impacted by Terrence's talk? And he said, you know, I was really angry before, and now I write love into all of my lyrics, into my writing, and into my life. So thank you for spreading that. And now it's my pleasure to welcome our moderators to the stage. Ranna is part of a Seattle-based grassroots collective of Palestinian and Swana feminists that organize at the intersection of gender justice and anti-imperialism. As a member of the diaspora, she continues to fight for the liberation of Palestine through building education and community in Seattle. Ranna has an MA in Cultural Studies from University of Washington and now works in the K-12 education system. Her practice centers on empowering students to use their voice to advocate for themselves and their community. Gilda Sheppard is faculty emerita. Faculty Emerita of Sociology, Cultural and Media Studies at Evergreen Tacoma, and taught at Washington prisons for over a decade. She is a co-founder of FEPS, Freedom Education Project for Puget Sound, an organization offering college-credited courses at Washington Correctional Center for Women. International award-winning filmmaker, most recently for her acclaimed documentary, Since I've Been Down, featuring the Black Prisoner Caucus and their liberation education program, Teach. And next up, Dr. Angela Davis. But I know some of her life work may not be familiar to all of our younger students. She is Professor Emerita of History and Consciousness Studies and Feminist Studies at UC Santa Cruz, an activist, writer, and lecturer. Her work focuses on prisons, police, abolition, and the related intersections of race, gender, and class. She's the author of many books, which will be available up here after the show. Most recently, Abolition, Feminism Now, and a new book of essays entitled Abolition, Politics, Practices, Promises. She is also a founding member of Critical Resistance, a national organization dedicated to dismantling the prison industrial complex, and works internationally with Sisters Inside, an abolition organization based in Queensland, Australia, that works on solidarity with people in women's prisons. And like many educators, Dr. Davis is especially concerned with the general tendency to devote more resources and attention to the prison system than to educational institutions.
All right.
I know you're ready to hear from her, right? Okay. I'll just say she helped popularize the term the prison industrial complex, and she urges all audiences to think seriously about the future possibility of a world without prisons and to help forge a 21st century abolitionist movement.
When you're feeling good, you should make a joyful noise, but you have, so thank you so much. We'll keep it going. This is going to be a wonderful conversation. Breaking the fourth wall. Therese, thank you. Therese asked us to begin with talking about our connection to Angela Davis, right? Who says, Professor Dr. Angela Davis, she says Angela. I first met Angela Davis when I was in this group called the Choir of Poets with Marcia Tater-Runga, who is the dean. And she was running for vice president, right? No, serious, that's a serious thing. That's a beautiful thing. That's a brave thing. Yes, of the United States, and she was doing a talk on democracy versus Reagan, and the Choir of Poets with Dr. Tater-Runga and I opened for her, and that was in the 80s. Marcia Tater-Runga was like 12. But let me tell you my real connection, other than that, is what Angela brought was the connection of theory and practice, the importance of study. And it recalled to me what my mother used to tell me about my grandfather and grandmother, who were Garveyites. And they would read the newspaper and analyze it and talk to other people about it. You talk about critical thinking. And Angela helped me to recall that, to be informed in my practice, right? And so when I started working in labor here in Seattle, Washington with Tyree Scott with the Black Workers Group, we studied Marxism, Leninism. We weren't afraid of that. We studied nationalism because we wanted to dismantle it. And we went across those significant differences. My grandfather talked about the Flint strike, where they had study groups. And then we went to 7 cities in the South, and what we had was study groups. We studied political philosophy. We studied what people have done. We read the newspaper, and not just read it, we critiqued it. But what I love about Angela is that she's not only in the academic halls, she's with the brother and sister on the corner. And so, that's what I'm talking about. And so, even when I was working in prisons, I thought, okay, I'm going to bring Angela Davis, our prisons obsolete, right? I didn't have to bring it. Those brothers had read it. So it questioned how I look at people also. It's important for us to interrogate ourselves when we're doing study, not just outside, not just with people, that's important, but inside. And so that's what Angela Davis brought to me, a connection of theory and practice, the importance of study, that what we do needs to be done based on something fired in the kiln of what Gramsci says, the organic intellectual, and see that happening all the time. I can go on and on, but let me move it on to...
Hi, everyone. How's it going? The energy in this room is unbelievable, and I can feel it. I'm feeling it all, and I just appreciate you all for being here tonight. And what an incredible honor for me to sit alongside 2 legends. It was, I'm gonna be so real. When they asked me to do this, I was like, why are you guys choosing me? Like, of all the intellectuals that could possibly be in this seat, And then all my people were like, there's a reason you're here. So, and there's a reason that you all are here too. Me being here, it's a very full circle moment actually, and I want to quickly shout out my family. I love you all, and my comrades, I love you all deeply, because about 6 or 7 years ago, Angela came to my university when I was at University of Washington doing my graduate studies in cultural studies, and she did her talk, she did her thing, and she actually signed my book, and let me tell you, I was geeked out. Like, she wrote, "For Ranna, free Palestine," and I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest day ever. And you know, not only did she write that and like it changed my life or whatever, but like, it also was a moment for me to be like, wow, this book has been pivotal in my thinking about collective liberation, in the way that I think about Black and Palestinian solidarity. And it really brought new meaning to the phrase, "No one is free until we are all free." We are in really, really, really critical times. I mean, we have been for a really long time, but like now is more critical than ever. And you know, for my people in Palestine, for the people in the diaspora, for everyone in the world, for Black people globally too, and people who are struggling and marginalized and face all kinds of forms of oppression, the times we are in are so critical. So it's telling that you people are here today to listen to two legends. So I'm, again, honored to be here today. And with that, we're going to get into the questions because I don't think you want to hear from me anymore. So the first question that we have for you is thinking about, you know, the critical times we are in, and thinking about the charge of fascism and how it's entered the mainstream, because you pointed to this much earlier in your work. What historical parallels do you see, and how can we organize across struggle to build collective power?
First of all, good evening, everyone. I always love coming to Seattle, and especially because the invitation came from Cindy and Craig Corey and the Rachel Corey Foundation. Like so many others, I'm always inspired by Rachel Corey's courage and her willingness to stand up for the freedom of Gazans, Palestinians, people everywhere. So I'm really happy to be here this evening. It's kind of cold. It's kind of rainy, but so fascism. We've been talking about fascism for a very long time. As a matter of fact, I think it might make sense to remember the Double V campaign during World War II, when organizations like the Southern Negro Youth Congress, which was linked to the Communist Party, to a certain extent. By the way, when I ran for office, I was running, you failed to mention that.
She was running for vice president.
Yeah, but on what ticket?
Oh, the Communist Party.
To be clear.
I think we all know too.
But during that period of the 40s, when my mother was an activist, she wasn't actually a member of the Communist Party, but she was involved in a lot of struggles that were organized by Black communists, the struggle to free the Scottsboro Nine, for example. And during the period of World War II, as a matter of fact, my mother met my father recruiting Black men to fight fascism abroad and racism at home. So that was called the Double V campaign. You all should know about this. It should be in the history books. So, but we know why it isn't. So there have been various moments in the history of this country when you might say fascism has reared its ugly head. During, when Richard Nixon was elected, there was a lot of conversation about fascism at that time. When what was the name of the other one? Ronald Reagan. Somebody said to me the other day, I think it was Craig Corey. When we were driving up from the airport, your friend Ronald Reagan. But I would, also remind us that during the McCarthy era, we experienced, it extended from the early 40s up through the 50s and up through the 19th. As a matter of fact, I lost my first job at UCLA because I was a member of the Communist Party. Literally because I was a member of the Communist Party. And that was the, what people did not know was that vast numbers of teachers at the high school and elementary school level, professors at the college and university level had lost their jobs because they were communists, because they believed in socialism, because they believed that education should be free, because they believed that that housing should be available, because they believed that money should not be a measure of the worth of human beings. And so you see authoritarian responses. You see efforts to completely wipe out people who were standing up against those who were arguing that we should have a society that is determined by those who own the wealth. Now, no one could have imagined then that we would be looking at what we're looking at now. Talking about fascism, we saw the repression as a sign of the possibility of fascism, and that is how we talked about fascism during the period in which I was in jail. As a matter of fact, when I was in jail, I remember I wrote an essay, which is still, I think it must be with my paper somewhere. It was about 150 pages on fascism, and trying to learn a lot from people who were in prison and talking about the ways in which that institution reflected fascism. So nowadays, where are we? if one considers, for example, I mean, you know, this is a terrible moment. There is so much pain and suffering, but at the same time, for me, it's an exciting moment. Because as someone who's been working around Palestine for the vast majority of my life, I have never seen as many people in this country and in other parts of the world stand with Palestine. But let me just say that many of the elements of fascist repression are being recognized in the responses of the state of Israel, but also the most important supporter of the state of Israel, which is what? The United States. Yeah. None of this would be happening if it weren't for the government of the United States of America. Let's let this be a theme in our conversation. I don't want to,
We have a lot
monopolize
of
the
questions.
conversation right now, so.
No, this is great. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, every time I see a white person at the grocery store wearing a kufiya, I'm like, it makes me speechless a little bit, because in this time, to see people standing in solidarity with my people, I've never, ever experienced that in my lifetime. And I have a lot of life to live still, but like it's a wild experience to see like a visual silent representation that someone is with you, they see you, maybe not fully understand the things that you've been through, but like can honor you. So, yeah.
That wouldn't be happening if not for the organizing work that has been going on for a very long time.
Absolutely. And to speak to, critical times too, Gilda and I were in the back room, we were ranting about capitalism as we do. And we're thinking about, all the places that we have to be. We have to work, we have to, feed our families, we have to be siblings, we have to be partners, we have to, make ends meet, to pay the bills, all the things that capitalism drains from us. And yet we still want to be able to dedicate our time to the things that we care about and the things that we love. So we're talking about like how important practice and theory and study is. And while we want to do that, all of the life factors always get in the way. So my next question for you is thinking about that, and sometimes the actionizing of liberatory theory can feel unattainable. How can we continue to turn to theory and study into, how can we continue to turn theory and study into achievable action?
Well, first of all, how many of you are students attending a college or university? How many of you are students who do not necessarily attend a college or university? I think it is important to demystify education and learning and knowledge production. Now, don't get me wrong, I think colleges and universities are really important. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the administrators of these places. I say that because it's probably one of the few places, one of the few sites where you are able to spend almost all of your time reading and writing and thinking. Now, there's also another place I would mention, And what would that be? Exactly. When you think about sites where knowledge is produced,
There you go.
where people spend the majority of their time cultivating their intellects, thinking deeply, I would say it's the college, university, and it's also the prison. As a matter of fact, it's the prison for those who learn how to survive imprisonment. The only way to really survive is to live the life of the mind. It's so interesting when I first went to jail, I was thinking, oh, you know, I'm doing the same thing I did as a graduate student. I basically spent all of my time reading and writing and thinking. So I take that seriously. I take it seriously because you assume that students are going to complete their studies and are going to try to make some kind of contribution with what it is they've learned. But we don't take seriously the fact that there's another population that has also spent years sometimes studying. And we don't ask ourselves, how can they contribute to what is often called the free world? And in many ways, people in prison are sometimes even more dedicated to doing that than students who attended, professional universities. Theory and practice, they're not separate. There is no theory without practice. Practice, as a matter of fact, there's the word praxis, which indicates that the practice one is engaged in incorporates and reflects the theory, the theorizing. And I don't think that either theory or practice works alone. You can, they talk about armchair, what do they call them? Armchair revolutionaries. Yeah. And in terms of my own life, it was really interesting. I told you I was. Did I tell you I was teaching at UCLA for a minute? In 1969, 1970, I got hired to teach in the philosophy department because they didn't have anyone to teach German idealism and Marxism. And so the chair of the philosophy department hired me precisely because they needed someone to teach Marxism. Now, if you take Marxism seriously, you understand the dialectic between theory and practice. You don't just read and understand, you act as well. And so then I was going to say they found out I was a member of the Communist Party, but they already knew that. And that's why they fired me. They fired me because I took that dialectical relationship between theory and practice very seriously. Yeah.
Speaking of all the students in here, shout out to all, again, the college students, but also lifelong students, because this work is a marathon, not a sprint. I work in K-12 education, and often I hear students say, if I only knew this about my education, I could be able to challenge what I'm learning in critical ways, like using critical thought or critical questions to be able to maybe make the learning more relevant to the life that I live as a student, not just like Eurocentric books that are really boring. And I often think about the term agency and like how we have to instill that in our youth at a really young age. Like the minute that they're born, we gotta tell them that they can do what? They can do anything, and that if they advocate for themselves, that the world will change, and advocate for those around them. So my last question for you in this section is thinking about how do we teach our children that they do have the agency to make choices about their education and what they're learning?
Well, I would say that to be critical is to raise questions. And in my opinion, the very nature of education involves learning how to raise questions. It's not just about acquiring knowledge. It's not an acquisitive relationship to facts. I mean, you have facts at your fingertip. All you have to do is pick up one of your devices and, you can figure out, what this fact or that fact. But what is understanding? And what is questioning? And not only questioning what you learn, but questioning everything around you. Oftentimes, questioning that which you most take for granted. And one of the themes of this evening's program is abolition, right? Prisons. For so long, we did not even question the existence of an institution that is so inherently racist and repressive. We just assume that it exists.
Right.
And if it exists now, it's going to exist forever. A critical engagement with the world allows us to understand how important it is to question everything. To question gender.
Come on.
And I always like to say that we're very indebted to the trans movement. For making the point that which we are supposed to totally take for granted, that gender is a binary structure,
That's right. Yeah.
can be effectively challenged and can create earth-shaking changes. I mean, look, we have see, I don't even like to talk about him, but you know who I'm talking about, who is so fearful of these ways of questioning the world that have emerged over the last period. Questioning, questioning gender, questioning Black studies, Black history, questioning history. Questioning the state of Israel. And what we learn is that those areas of our social and political existence that are not subject to questioning are more than likely ideology. And Zionism in terms of the state of Israel. If we want to understand, why Israel has been able to, carry out the kind of colonialism, settler colonialism, and ethnic cleansing for so many decades with a relatively small, up to this point, groups of people standing and saying no to settler colonialism and expressing solidarity with the people of Palestine. So yeah, it's not a fact, it's ideology. And so that is why we really have to learn to develop this capacity to constantly question, to especially question that which we take for granted. Especially when someone tells us that this cannot be changed. That's when we really have to use our tools of critical thinking to try to figure out, everything changes.
That's right.
Nothing exists forever. Everything changes and becomes something else. That's, if you study dialectics, you'll understand that. Permanent, constant change, etc.
And that change breathes life into any organism. And that's important, why we say to question. We use a lot of phrases like prison abolition and intersectional feminism. And sometimes we need to question that too. And not take it for granted what it means. And that's been part of Angela Davis' vision for a long time, but she unravels that because she's not an armchair revolutionary. So Kamonte Carter and I, of the Black Prisoner Caucus, and Taw Wilson, who was a member of the Women's Village, developed mechanisms, as well as Kiwi, I see you down there, Kiwi, developed mechanisms in the prison so that these men and women and them and they could question each other, right? And themselves, not just each other, but themselves too, about concepts. I remember when I first went to the women's prison, this one woman said, yeah, well, maybe prisons are necessary. So I said, okay, let's talk about that. And so we questioned it. We threw it up, we threw it down, we threw it all around, and what it meant to be prison abolitionists. I remember Dr. Maxine Mims, when she started Evergreen State College, mentor. One of the schools, places where we had Evergreen had these big windows, right? And Dr. Mims said, I want people in the neighborhood to walk around and see people studying, seeing people question. And so let's question prison abolition and intersectional feminism. Because that's been a part of your vision. And how do you define those things, both concepts? And how do they come together for these critical times?
Ooh, okay.
You know she got this. But isn't that lovely to watch someone think? It's such a beautiful thing.
Well, I'll start with the institution of the prison and point out that as an institution that is designed to enact punishment, the prison is a relatively young formation. I mean, as a matter of fact, you can probably date the existence of prisons that are specifically designed to punish. Now, I'm not talking about places where people were held until they were punished, when punishment largely consisted of corporal punishment and capital punishment. I'm talking about doing time. which is very interesting, that concept of doing time, isn't
Yeah.
it? If we had many hours, we could talk about the relationship between that concept of punishment and capitalism. Because the prison as punishment is a capitalist institution. And it does not really emerge until around the time of the American Revolution, which is also around the time of the French Revolution, the rise of the bourgeoisie. The American Revolution was a bourgeois revolution. It wasn't a revolution for working class people. But I'll put a footnote there. So yeah, let's remember that this is a relatively young institution, and it's very much influenced by the rise of the economic system that we call capitalism. And I mentioned doing time. If you study, how many of you have read any of Marx? Well, if you know anything about Marx's theory of value, that it is related to time. It is related to labor time, right? And I'm just actually going to say this so that you do some more research yourself, because it would take me probably about, at least several sessions to delve deeply into the theory of value, exchange value, money, and the relationship between those forms of value and the labor time that is actually incorporated in objects that are produced and things that, and of course, the notion of abolition actually emerges around the same time as the institution itself. Because there were people who did not believe that it made sense to lock people up. That was that certainly is not going to help to rehabilitate anyone. I mean, anyone who has common sense should know that. Because it's a totally artificial environment. How can people learn to rehabilitate themselves under conditions of absolute repression? It's a contradiction in terms.
That's right.
So there were those who argued from the very beginning that there should not be these institutions, in the same way that they argued that capital punishment shouldn't exist. And look, we still have capital punishment. So what I want to conclude this part of the conversation by saying that, yeah, I was one of those people who never questioned the existence of prisons. Yeah. There were jails and prisons all around. And, I can remember growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, where images of Black people in the newspaper were always designed to look as if they were mugshots.
That's right.
So it wasn't just about the institution. It was about all of the ideologies incorporated in and reproduced by the fact that institution existed. So my first experience with someone saying that we needed to abolish prisons was when I was in jail myself. And it was in 1971. And it was the Attica Rebellion.
There you go.
So I mean, I think it's so important for us to recognize that much of what has been deeply meaningful in the struggle has been initiated by people in prison themselves. Thinking about the fact that there are courses of study, there are ways of thinking about prison studies as an academic field that were also initiated by people in prison. And I think it's probably the case that even today there are people who choose to pursue those studies and don't even realize that it was prisoners themselves. Or we try not to say prisoner, we try to say people in prison, because that's one of the changes that has happened as a consequence, not defining people as prisoners, just as we don't like to say slaves.
That's right.
We like to think about the humanity of people who were enslaved. So we say, instead of saying slaves, we say enslaved human beings or enslaved people. But yeah, that field wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be talking about abolition today had it not been introduced by people who are in prison. And should I just give a simple, there's no simple definition of abolition, but I guess it's a provocation. Because we usually think of abolition as destroying something.
Right.
Dismantling, getting rid of it. But the abolitionist movement during the era of slavery was not simply to get rid of the institution. I mean, that kind of happened. The institution itself was declared defunct, right? But what about, all of the influences of the institution? What about all of the ideologies that had insinuated themselves in virtually every aspect of social and political fabric in this country? That remained intact. Mm-hmm. All they did was said, slavery shall not exist. And we're still dealing with the aftermath of that failure to truly abolish slavery. Mm-hmm. So and W.E.B. Du Bois argued, to truly abolish slavery wouldn't have involved simply getting rid of the institution. It would have involved the development of new institutions, more radical forms of democracy that would have guaranteed the ability to incorporate formerly enslaved people into a new radical democracy. That never happened. And that is what we're still trying to do in the 21st century. I'm going to say something that's a bit counterintuitive, but abolition, rather than being primarily destruction, is about rebuilding.
There you go.
It's about reproducing, recreating a different society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you said that things become normalized, after a while you think, well, it's prison. It's here. And not look at the culture of punishment that reverberates from prison that we see every day in our lives. Right? You know, I call myself a prison abolitionist, and you know why? Because of what you just said, and you made it so clear. Kamati Carter and I go every Wednesday to South Shore School, K through 8. That's kindergarten through 8th grade, because we're prison abolitionists. We go there, and the child, who's maybe 12 years old, sits back in a normal position and says, yeah, my best friend got killed yesterday. Normal. Okay? Then another one says there were two my cousins were shooting in front of the school. Where do we start this story? Just like Angela said, where do we start the story of prisons? And she went back, and where do we start the story so that we can have an analysis and break through, rupture that normality? You know, it is, as you so well stated, it is creating a better world. And that means we need to work with our children. We need to work with Palestine. We need to bring up Sudan. We need to bring up the Congo and see the connection even to gentrification. My family, but also from reading Angela Davis, and I am not, you know me, I don't just like, oh, Angela, but I do sometimes. But you know, she is no diva. That's what I love about Angela. Once, she was speaking at University Beyond Bars, and then we were, she allowed me to give her a ride home with some other folks who are the family of people in prison. And I was so nervous, I thought, you know, would you drive somebody? You know, and she was so down there. So we were in the lobby drinking cheap wine and burnt popcorn and talking political stuff about Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I said, but he didn't say this. And she looked at me, she said, You know, she didn't say, well, he should have, da-da-da-da. She said, You know, like, come on, Gilda. What you got to say? Are you going to normalize punishment? You know, really. You know, James Baldwin said, you could be that cop over there. So, you know, we need to break through our normality. Speaking of which, I'm sorry, Todd said something. Okay, anyway, I'm sorry, we're breaking the fourth wall. Anyway, in The Meaning of Freedom, you wrote that it is a very capacity of feminism to embrace more and more complexity in response to historical circumstances that renders it so exciting and so radical. Feminism being so exciting and so radical that we need to embrace it in these critical times, right? Sometimes you say you're a feminist. I remember when I was teaching at Monroe, and MC said, "You talking about feminism made me look at my R&B." You know, look at what the lyrics said. You know, to interrogate popular culture. So Angela, what do you think are the exciting contemporary connections in feminism today? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, I have to start by saying that that for a very long time I was very suspicious of feminism.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
And I still am.
Yes, come on.
Because there's a kind of feminism that represents itself as you know, simply trying to understand what women are.
Mm.
And then, and how do they construct this category of women?
Right. Yes, indeed.
Well, the reason I absolutely refused to identify into that category of feminism early on was because it was pretty much white.
Yeah, right.
I mean, as a matter of fact, we used to talk about white bourgeois feminism.
Right.
Because it wasn't revolutionary. It was about assimilating into the existing structure. It was about, the glass ceiling. It wasn't about changing anything. It was about allowing things to remain as they are, but incorporating women into that system. So, and my position, like the position of so many of my friends and comrades, was that we need a revolution. We cannot allow this society to remain the way it is and simply allow women to do the things that men have historically done. I mean, we see the same process in terms of Black people and other people of color, as opposed to, I mean, even in DEI. I've been a critic of DEI, but now I have to say, the reason I've been a critic is because it does not include transformation. It does not include justice. It's about leaving things as they are and bringing those who were previously excluded into the existing structures. But even that has become radical. I mean, I saw who is this woman who is Lisa Franchetti, who is with the Air Force, right? She just got fired. Oh, and also what's his name? The Black guy who was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. CQ Brown? Yeah. He got fired. And he obviously got fired because he was Black, because Trump, I mean, he's so stupid that you can't even have a conversation. That he assumes that if a plane crashes, it's because they hired some people who were not qualified because of DEI. The DEI is about not being qualified. Or affirmative action. Affirmative action was designed to bring people who had been excluded by virtue of their race, their gender, by virtue of the history of repression.
There you go.
And, well, anyway. It used to be possible to have conversations with some of those people. But now, there's no dialogue possible. But anyway, what were we talking about?
I mean, speaking of dialogue, it's so incredibly hard to have dialogue, even just bring up the word Palestine in any public space that you are in. And, being Palestinian myself, I have been doxxed. I have been doxxed to the hills, and I've experienced white supremacists coming after me, coming after my job, coming after my family, death threats, all the things because of who I am in the world, and just because I care about my homeland, people don't like that. And so when we're talking about radical times, like doubling down on the things that we really care about, that's more important than ever. And you've been a long-time advocate of international solidarity. How did you get engaged in Palestine work, but also how do you understand the US context for organizing on Palestine, especially when we think about campus repression today? And then, okay, last one. There's a lot. Answer whatever you feel. What are your thoughts on the next phases for Palestine organizing for Gaza?
Well, you know, I always like to point out that as an undergraduate, I attended Brandeis University, which is a Jewish university, which was founded in 1948, the year of the founding of the state of Israel. And you know, I went to Brandeis in 61, I think, 61, 62, and graduated in 65. And so I learned about Palestine from my Jewish classmates. You know, I learned about it because there were, you know, not all of them, of course, but there was there were those who were talking about the settler colonialism, and those who especially had grandparents who survived, or parents even, who survived the Holocaust, and who were dedicated to not allow that to happen again, who took seriously never again. And so, you know, my experience has been that the people who are Jewish, either secular Jews or religious Jews, who have taken that story seriously are the ones who are calling for solidarity with Palestine today. There you go. Jewish Voice for Peace, for example. I served on the Russell Tribunal for Palestine, and that structure, that tribunal was created by Jewish people who had experienced the Holocaust. So, yeah, I was very young then. So, and I just, for me, internationalism came very naturally. It's interesting because now people assume that what you think about first and foremost is your own issues, your own struggle. And then you have to figure out, you know, how to reach out to others. But my experience has been exactly the opposite. I found that I understood better who I was and where I was coming from as a consequence of being involved in international solidarity. And I don't know, I think especially in this country, which is so provincial. You know, this is, living in the US is like living in a little village that thinks of itself as the center of the world, as the most important place in the world. So I understand why the US has been the most important ally of Israel, because Israel has the same kind of solipsistic, narcissistic sense of itself as the most important place in the world. And as a matter of fact, you would think that with the experience of the Holocaust, there would be a dedication to guarantee that doesn't happen to anyone, anywhere.
Right, yeah.
But who do you see Israel in solidarity? Have you ever heard of the state of Israel expressing solidarity with any other struggle in the world? Have you?
No.
What about Sudan?
Yeah,
What about Congo?
that's right.
What about Haiti?
Come on.
So there's something really wrong about being so self-centered and so narcissistic that you can only think about and act on who you think you are.
That's so true. I was reading this book The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. Anybody read that? Yeah. And it talks about how, what Angela was saying is that, believing that progress for one group is at the expense of another, right? But how we, as Evergreen says, we need to work across significant differences, right? Right? Evergreen says that, right? And so, but, so that, as Angela was saying, that this internationalism should be organic within us. But democracy, and I know Angela talked about indivisible justice. Quote from Martin Luther King, which says we need to expand justice to include issues like prison abolition, immigration rights, Palestinian solidarity, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, trans and queer rights. And you need to interrogate yourself with that, not just out there. So I want to ask you, Angela, since media is so controlled by just They said the other day it said 6. I don't know what it is today, but we have always used media. Okay, please.
Gilda, before you move on to media, can I say something?
I want you to say something.
I'm listening to you talk about the importance of working across differences. And I totally agree with you.
Okay.
But I think we need, sometimes we need to question the formulations we use. Mm-hmm. And I've used that formulation, working across difference. But what I've also learned through feminist theory and practice is that difference doesn't have to be an impediment.
Come on.
We kind of naturally assume that difference is something that will obstruct our unity. Mm-hmm. And the more I learn, the more I think I recognize that the difference actually can be the very motor for that unity and that solidarity. We're so used to thinking about how we have to act across our differences or beyond our differences or in spite of our differences. But I think it's our differences that can be the glue for our connection. What we learn from other people who are not like, we don't think of as being like ourselves, but we learn that in most instances, there is a sense of connection that is far deeper than identity and some of these other issues. But I would just like you to think about that.
Yes, indeed.
And
this is a beautiful conversation. Did you see all that?
also, how do we incorporate what we don't assume to be a natural part of the agenda around specific struggles? Like, for example, I have to cough. For example.
Yes. Go ahead, Angie.
We got schooled earlier.
Go ahead, Angie.
What are we doing with these plastic bottles?
You pour water into a glass. She looked at me, she said, Gilda, it's still plastic. I'm like, she said, well, I'm gonna get something out this. I said, but the water off the faucet, she said, we used to drink that.
My water out of the sink. But you see how easily we can be determined by ideology. And in the meantime, the simple fact of drinking out of these plastic bottles is destroying the earth. It's like all of us have microplastic in our bodies as a consequence of somebody deciding that they could make money by putting water in plastic bottles. And we go along with it. So I'm just giving you an example of how trying to think a little bit more deeply, right? Trying to be radical.
Yeah.
Do you know what radical means? It's root, exactly. Try to go beyond the surface, and somebody gives you a bottle of plastic, a bottle of plastic here. It's like that's what's happening to you, and that's what's happening to the ocean, and that's what's happening, to animals, and it's because there are capitalist corporations that make money from oftentimes taking tap water and putting it in plastic bottles. Sorry.
No. We have
a conversation.
Okay, Therese did give me that was supposed to be your last question, but we only get Angela here one time, so we're gonna ask her one more question. I'm using my co-facilitating power here. And we talked a lot about repression, and we talked about state entities and the ways that they use violence to stop activists from doing the work that they want to do on the ground. And I know that there are so many activists in the crowd here and organizers, whether you're doing national work or you're doing, local work, whether it be in a prison or whether it be within your local community, wherever it is. It's really, really hard work, and we put our bodies on the line to be able to, advocate for the people and the things that we care about. So, and I'm sure this isn't unique to Seattle, but we've seen continued repression of activists by state entities with an increase in violent tactics, arrests, criminal charges, and misdemeanors. What advice do you give people who are on the brunt of this repression? And then what would you tell them to remember as their core tenets to keep them grounded, knowing that this work is a marathon, not a sprint?
Well, we have to do this all together.
That's right.
The only way I think, and I'm not a person who likes to hand out advice.